Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mark, for your introduction. Also, Mark, you forgot to mention that I actually served at one time on the Humanities Center, but also the Center for Citizenship. So it's great to see that the center is growing, and welcome everybody to Detroit if you're from elsewhere. And we will aim to entertain. Marion and I have done a number of performances together, sometimes with more musicians and sometimes just the two of us. And I thought that in lieu of the theme of the conference, that it would be, really cool for two women to do our thing up here. Mary and I met about 15 years ago, maybe, but we found out once we met that actually her parents knew my mother. Her mother and my mother taught together at the Old Eastern High School back in 1958, and both her father and my mom are swimming teachers, which was sort of an anomaly of black people swimming in the 1950s, and were really important in terms of breaking a lot of barriers in Detroit public schools, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to break barriers too, artistically. Also, you should know that Marion Hayden was one of the founders of Straight Ahead, which is an all-women's jazz ensemble, which is another first and very, very accomplished group of artists. So in the selections that we're going to present tonight are all from the perspective of black women from various periods in history, but also from different lifestyles and perspectives. The first poem that I want to read is called Eulogy for Julia C. Collins. And Julia C. Collins was a 19th century writer, and she had published a number of essays and stories in the official publication of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, which of course was in the forefront of the abolitionist movement. And they discovered a lost serialized novel of hers a few years ago, and I was contacted by one of the editors at the African American Review, who said, since you've written the biography on Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who was a contemporary of Collins, would you be interested in writing on this piece? And I said, sure. But when I started to try to write the essay, it kept coming out as a poem. And so I sent her an email and I said, look, this is what's going on. And she said, fine. If you want to do a poem, then great. So what I did was, in this creation, to capture her voice, was to read her work and to sort of mesh her voice with my style, my writing style. And so if you actually saw the poem, there are parts where her voice or her language is actually italicized, so you know that I'm moving in and out of her language. And I don't usually read this poem except to academic audiences, because it's really kind of 19th century, and contemporary audiences get a little tired. So I'm going to impose on you, and you will have to listen to this. And this poem is written, the idea is speculations on her thoughts in Oswego, New York, at Lake Ontario, circa January 1865. She was dying, and from what they used to call consumption, and had gone to Lake Ontario to try to become healthier. And so this poem is me in her head and talking about her work as well as the novel that she will not finish. Eulogy for Julia C. Collins. Icy winds slash the waves of Lake Ontario, dash open the wings of my winter cape, and rustle the furrows of my woolen skirt. I invite this assault, inhale deeply to force the frigid air into the recesses of my chest. Attempts to stifle this wretched disease, sucking my breath, consuming my lungs and my last winter's season. Under gray skies of hibernation, I battle the white skeleton of death. Like my pen pursuing the novel in this epistle, I chase the morning light. Anticipate stoic blue firs and pliant white birch trees emitting oxygen. The fresh, crisp air soothes my raspy throat and accentuates the paradox of a cough that intensifies when I exhale, urgently thirsting for the next moment. Invigorated by the immensity of vast waters reaching infinitely for the granite coastline, I anxiously await each breathtaking sunset. Unlike my fate, the heroine of my novel does not greet death. Claire survives in the dreams of Juno, her loyal nanny, reunites with her father and reconciles a broken family. In the vista of romanticism, the white dynasty frees the slaves. The New Orleans aristocracy returns to their native France. The enchanted count marries his beloved Claire, and then enlists with abolitionists to make a nation free for democracy. But before this improbable ending congealed, the cock crowed 3 times at my front door. The paper remains blank and white, and black ink does not exonerate the slave bride. Redeem the villains or the characters who condemned her daughter and invented her caste. Claire's destiny splinters into speculation within 1,000 imaginations, then dies inaudibly in the annals of lost literatures. Taciturn tales about miscegenation in fractured families, where mulatto children are hidden and betrayed, veiled portraits banish relatives, cruel patriarchs lord over estates, and jealous alabaster cousins serve tea on silver trays in the shade of verandas, and fortune supported by the injustice of shadowy clusters of servants, suffering amid common truths and racial fictions, while they iron shirts for the master's costume, starched cotton bosoms of opulence, glossy, stiff, and corpulent. In the foreground of this novel, a nation split by contrived borders bleeds. This war breaks brothers and breeds boys into men marked by uniforms to draw blood and the dead weight of another man's ideas. The golden sands sift swiftly arching toward a noble purpose and a goal worthy of death, perhaps for my children's children, for a grander doctrine that endows them with respect of citizenship without the advantage of inheritance or marriage, when daughters can express the pleasure of intellect without persecution from priest, afraid that the body of Mary was more than a vessel for Christ, that she taught her son to think with faith, to desire beyond flesh in a world that brands skin at birth, blinds minds with educated wickedness, and harnesses muscles with labor to profit and to prejudice them by. In the masonry of God's infinite domain, the architecture of history will construct a new age of enlightenment with fresh influences and new truths that embellish liberated minds. Our past must not vanish in the morning mist that mantle the gliding stream. As workers in the field of life, we must live in earnest, fruitions made real and resonant with freedom. Canadian winds haul Lake Ontario against a jagged shoreline, cleaning waste of all matters and all creatures. enveloping ships and sailors like salmon and trout caught in sweeping nets without consideration for breeds or politics. I enjoy this symphonic progression as the moon balances the seas and celestial constellations enhance the sun, as it maps the underground with vision unbound by laws of man, like power that pilots the flight of the phoenix, refracting prisms of light in the wings of a dragonfly, gliding along the coast in the clear calm after the storm. The rest are shorter. The next poem I wrote for Vivian Randall, who was the wife of Dudley Randall, the famous poet. And she was a really amazing woman. She grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, and she was born in 1923. And because of segregation, where they would have separate but equal law, or unlaw, whatever you want to call it, they had to give the top graduate of high school in Lexington, they had to give a full scholarship to a white student and also to a black student. She was the top graduate black student. And so she decided to take her scholarship and come to Wayne State University. She had an aunt who lived in Detroit, and that's how she got to Detroit, which is the way a lot of black people get to Detroit, right? Come to go to Wayne State University. So she was an amazing woman. She was a psychiatric social worker, but she was also a lapidarian. She worked with stones, and she was a world traveler and just an amazing person with tremendous talents and patience. So this poem is entitled, "We Weep with Faith," for Vivian Randall. You restore rocks from 4 continents, polished each with a diamond needle to refract gemstones as smooth as poems your husband crafts beneath a crescent moon. You chisel earth from veins of antiquity, patiently balance a marriage challenged by genius and artistic madness, fractured into stained glass portraits. Like misshapen clients, you stabilize with simple pride and some comprehension of unjust pain, inflicted by faceless men with intellects of shellfish and flaccid hands beyond their reach. In gray seasons, we weep with faith. Dust diminishes human flesh, and alpha women assume power embedded in stone. Thank you. I would like to read a poem for Alma Young. Some of you may remember Alma Young. She was the first Comey Young chair holder here at Wayne State, and she died tragically and too soon. And this is a poem that I wrote for Alma upon her passing. It's called By Self-Election, La Raison d'Etre. I'll miss promises to lunch at the neighborhood cafe on the next Saturday, or to take tea in sunlit gardens in spring moments lost under a deluge of papers, committees, symposiums, dissertations, or conferences, as you balance a melange of scholarly dialogues mental equations deduced with officious precision before speckled audiences. In the absence of missed retreats, we steal time in our offices to rejoice in our laurels as mothers, to shed our adult disguises in academic regalia, giggling like teenage girls on the telephone as we unravel daggers of adversity encoded in odious verbosity that rattles with dim humor in green rooms with dull light. In a hostile demography mediated by intellectual imperialism and a fear of blackness, you resist contentious forces with quiet valor, born of an ancient wound. And when our voices touch, the sky feels free to breathe by self-election, la raison d'etre, as activists of intellect, as Black, as woman, you walk in subtle, defiant form. Yeah. I come from, my family from a long line of educators, and my great aunt, my grandfather's older sister, was an English professor at Tennessee State University. So she, if you know anything about that generation, was born in 1897, right? Yeah, and she lived 95 years, a long time. And so when I first went to university, I went to Western Michigan University, I was an English major. And when I come home in the summer, she demanded to see all of my essays to make sure that, I was on point. I was scared to death for her to read my papers, even if they had A's, it's just like, okay. But she was really an amazing woman, and her name was Inez Boyd Foston, and this is the poem that I wrote for her. It's called Soft White Pearls. A veritable attorney of words, a dictionary of deportment, a surveyor of precision in declension sent to light libraries. You are like the soft white pearls you adorn, an infinitely balanced valence, teaching symmetrical passages to generations of classes, decoding messages beyond the delta into the magnificence of unwritten diasporas. Well, the interesting thing about the family, too, is that she was the oldest and she was very strict. And the youngest was very outgoing, and she was very beautiful, and she's the kind of person who never met a stranger. Everybody loved. And her name was Willa Beatrice, but we called her Auntie Bill. So she was Bill, right? And so this poem is for Auntie Bill, who lived to be 100. She said, I'm gonna live to be 100, and she did. And so this poem was written for the celebration of her 100th birthday, and I hope to have captured a lot of the things about her personality and her life, both wonderful and also some tragic things too. It's called Fearless Beauty. A Meridian offspring fused from Jewish, Indian, and African veins, you are a testament for a family that never bowed or scraped to ingratiate myths assigned by benefactors or Alabama slave masters. Perhaps the descendant of a vibrant and regal Senegalese maiden kidnapped by the waterfall when her father was not watching. You are the last and the first of 7 generations since freedom came. From the beginning, your meticulous mother, Known as Selma's premier modiste, designed your dresses in Parisian fashion. And as a queen delineating cultural aesthetics, you claimed your crown, ignited power from charm, married a man made of legends, and mothered a daughter who would invent kingdoms from unfinished futures. You held court in classrooms, instilling finesse, sensibility, and intelligence in children constrained by the inequities of the color line and fractured into double consciousness of distorted mirrors. In the shattered aftermath of your husband's irreconcilable passing, you renewed life with daughter Alice in the wonderland of grandchildren inside your son-in-law's protective enclave, and then took flight, circling continents and oceans, flashing stardust inside castles and onto ancient pyramids, stepping onto sandstones where philosophers and prophets cloistered to investigate mistakes in remembered histories to console our wounded humanity. But now, here in Detroit, in full view of holiday lights and a timeless river, your descendants contemplate your centennial and marvel at your fearless beauty, always wearing a dazzling smile and the most smashing, classy fashions. This next poem is entitled Dancing is Flying, and this is for a woman who actually went to Wayne State with my mother here back in the 50s, and she became a dance teacher and a choreographer, taught at Northern High School for 30-some years, and had her own dance studio, maybe one of the first black dance companies in the city of Detroit. And when I first started writing poetry, she had me to read poetry and the dancers to compose performances with the poetry, and it really was wonderful. She dragged me out there, and I was maybe before I was ready, but since she had known me since I was 8 years old, I couldn't say no, right? No say no to Jackie Hillsman. So this poem is for Jackie Hillsman, who tragically died from cancer too soon. But I think that this poem captures her spirit, hopefully. And also, Marion also performed for her dance company. So, Dancing is Flying for Jackie Hillsman. Dancing is flying, dancing is flying on top of your father's swing-tip steps, lifting you onto riffs in Ellington's winged symphonics. Dancing is flying with a pistol in your purse, tight to the hip behind the steel door of your studio, where bare feet reach for cusp of hope, delineating despair, greeting art, liberating air, empowered by sheer leotard bodies, leaping higher than tragic reflex spawned, like trash thrown from distorted grimaces of pale mass. Dancing is flying in experimental movements above submissive sterility and a society of gravity and disease that crippled your leg but could not break the swing of your winged steps. Dancing is flying, is dancing is flying, is dancing is flying, is dancing is flying, is dancing is. we're going to end with a poem that I wrote for Marion, which is entitled "The Base's Woman," when she was honored here a few years ago. And I was asked to speak, and I'm like, wow, I mean, you know, like she's been playing to my poetry. It's time for Marion to have her own poem. And so this is the poem that I wrote for Marion. The base is woman. At a left-angled tilt, adjacent to her throat, Marion mind melds with this magnificent instrument. Lithe, swift fingers, restringing eighth notes in cut time against bare-knuckle restraints, releasing stress from neck past breast through a circuitous navel, leading into a womb, gifting violet rifts like sweet rose water, brimming inside uninhibited thick hips that swing and sway, dancing on ripples of unreachable prayers. Her brown curves ground earth tones at the base of rhythm, the backbone of song. The base is woman. Thank you.